Okay, you know what? I might explain the mid game a little bit as well. I think we should explain the mid game because mid game comes up all the time. So I do have a whole side laning guide on my main channel, which you guys might want to look at because it's got more examples, but I'll kind of give you guys the crash course. I think most people kind of don't understand like what's going on in the mid game. So I'm just going to make it perfectly symmetrical right now. Everything's going to look even, and we'll talk about like what the perfect world looks like and then some of the more contested things, I guess. So the first rule of mid game is you want to push the side lane as far as you can without dying. So ideally, you get the wave all the way into turret. Now, we'll talk about the things you might need to be scared of, like jungles and shit later, but let's just talk as if the jungle and support don't exist for now. Pure 1v1, you want to shove the side lane as far as you can without dying. Obviously, if you win your side lane, that's a lot easier. If you don't, maybe you can already push it like to here. After that, it might get dangerous. But that's your goal, to push it as far as you can without dying. Now, why do you do that? Because if you can get the wave all the way in the turret, it means you don't lose creeps on the way in. So if you shove the wave to here, instead of all the way to turret, as your wave slow pushes, you will lose quite a lot of minions in the meantime, and it gives them time to come and collect it. If you get the wave all the way into the turret, they immediately have to answer or they start losing stuff. Now, once you get the wave into the turret, you have two options. If they're defending, you can look to rotate mid and make a play, or you can like base, or you can do camp. You can do whatever you want, basically. But normally, if they're defending, you probably won't hit the turret. If they aren't defending and you feel safe, you can just keep taking this. And if this guy is like sitting mid when he shouldn't be or something, you can get a shit ton of gold by just pressuring the side lane. So that's like that's your first rule, right? Push the side lane as far as you can without dying. Now, let's talk about like how to kind of know what like the not dying thing looks like. So one of the biggest things is playing around the jungle positions. So if, for example, your jungler is topside, then it's going to be really scary to push all the way here unless you know this guy is also topside. So a lot of playing the mid game is about tracking your jungler versus their jungler. Now, if your jungler are right next to you, that's different because even if you don't know where this guy is, you're kind of shielded, right? But you've got to be quite careful. Like if we're shoved all the way up here, and our jungler's like making a play topside, like you're kind of asking to die. And we call this strong side, weak side. So if you're weak sided, which means if your jungler is like away from you, you generally need to be quite careful as a default. Like your general goal is like don't die on weak side and just minimize. And in that case, if you don't feel safe shoving bot, you might want to look to hover mid or something instead. You can come walk behind these guys. Most of the time though, you will hopefully see this guy at some point, and then you can start pressuring. So something you can do is like sit in a bush, wait for this guy to show, and then once they do, you can look to shove. So that's like the next thing. You can also look to set up your vision. So for example, like if you can have a pink and a ward, it's quite valuable. So let's say we're trying to play to get the wave into the tier 2. What you could do is something like this. Maybe you could pink this bush and then ward this Phaelite. Or you could ward this bush and pink this Phaelite. If you're playing for the tier 1, maybe our vision is like a bit further back, right? So your wards are going to kind of draw the line for how far you can push on the side lane. And that's why something I see in sessions a lot is people ward too shallow. So like as they're walking out of base, they feel a little scared, so they like ward this bush. And the problem is like, yeah, okay, maybe that bush was a little dangerous. Maybe you should have waited for your jungler to be a bit closer, because otherwise, if you do decide to push this, now you're like fucked. You can't push past this line, and you have no vision for when you actually get to here. So be very careful placing your vision too shallow is actually a big thing. Now, another thing I want to talk about here is that holding TP... Oh my god, I didn't mean to do that. Quickly, we gotta move stuff. Holding TP actually has a lot of value. So a good guideline, again, is that TP gives you permission to side lane, or at least it makes it like a hell of a lot easier. You don't have to have TP up to side lane, but like a lot of the time people ask me, okay, like what do I do if my team randomly fights? If there's no objective up, it might not actually matter. Like if there's no dragon, there's no barons, maybe you don't even need to be at the fight. But if there is, you probably do want to TP into the fight most of the time. And so if you don't have TP, you've got to be careful how much time you spend in side lane. And again, you probably want to check my side laning guide for this because there's too many factors. But if you think a fight's going to happen and it's important, like there's objectives soon or whatever, you probably do need to hover mid. I will say, pretty much regardless of if you have TP or not, you should generally try and base 1 minute before dragon so that you have time to spend your gold, get full resources, come back on the map, and try and be in this area 40 seconds before dragon. That's like the only time in the game you really need to be grouped. That and if you have Baron buff. Other than that, you actually want to be split from your team as much as possible. You want to try not to share golden XP with anyone, ideally, but with other carries especially. That's like really bad. What about your bot support position? If they didn't push wave at all, is it dangerous to be deep on the side? Yeah, so like we've talked about junglers. The reality is you do kind of need to think about everyone if you can. So like, yeah, you're right. Like let's say you're trying to push bot. and your bot lane is losing and they're getting pushed in, yeah, it's going to be really, really dangerous. That's why I kind of give that guideline of like, you want to push as far as you can without dying. So if you're going to die by doing this, you'd probably not want to do it. And the reality is, like, when you're learning side lane, you're going to end a few times, you know? Like, you're just going to have to run it a bit. It's tough. Like, I used to suck at side laning, and the way I got better was watching a lot of side lane VODs, and obviously just, like, playing the side lane myself. But I watched a lot of VODs, and I just went from, like, the 14 to 25 minute mark, and I just spammed that. I just, like, watched that whole section, and I kind of saw, like, when you can push and when you can't, like, what kind of factors there are. Team tempo is a big one. You know, like we talked about if their bot has prior, but another one is even if their bot doesn't have prior, if you're bot lane in jungler and base or something like this, you know, and pushing here is going to be really dangerous. So syncing tempo with your team is another big one. In this case, you'd probably want to either play safe or base with your team because it's too dangerous to pressure. At the same time, if your team is playing really aggressively, even if they're playing aggressively up here, if these guys get into a fight, you're never allowed to base. You need to pressure ball. You either need to join that fight with TP, and if you don't have TP, you need to pressure ball because we need to make sure they're pressuring at the same time. So that's a big one. I think the only last, like, there's a lot of, like, random stuff for mid-game. I kind of talked about some already, like, basing 1 minute before Dragon. But the other really big one I want to say, because this is something that comes up in coaching all the time, is there is no risk-free play. So a lot of the time people tell me, like, oh, I'm too scared to push the side lane because I'm scared I'll, like, throw the game and die. And don't get me wrong, guys, like, there is a chance you die on the side lane. And let's say you have, like, I don't know, a 20% chance of dying by pushing this out. It may actually still be worth going for it. So there's two things I want to say there. One, getting the wave in is extremely valuable. So not only does this give you a lot of golden XP, but it kind of like weights fights in your favor, right? Like if you're the one who can trap this guy or like lock them on the side lane, you make these fights 5v4 or 4v3 or whatever. Like you make numbers advantage fights. So like, while there is risk in shoving the side lane, right? There is just as much risk in taking a 5v5 instead of a 5v4 because you're like trusting your teammates to play that fight as well as your opponents, which is quite risky. And you're saying that, okay, I can win that fight without all the extra gold and XP I'm gathering from side lane. So basically, it's like if you're too scared to push side lane, you're just off, or like you're not offsetting the risk. You're like moving that risk to team fights instead of side lane. And obviously, you want to know your limits, right? Like you want your risk to be calculated. I'm not saying you should just run it down the side lane, but there's a reason things like quote unquote good deaths on the side lane are a thing, and that's because again, just shoving the side lane is immensely valuable. And it is sometimes worth dying for. Like you will see a lot of people, like look at Chovy, right? Like Chovy's probably the best side laner in the world, right? He fucking dies on side lane. He does. And that's like a super. I mean, if the best side lane in the world dies on side lane, you need to be willing to die on side lane too. So yeah, guys, watch your 14 to 25 minute marks. Just like go to YouTube and watch VODs. It'll make a big difference. And try and pay attention to like why they're moving away. You know, it could be things like the jungle is on the opposite side. It could be the champs, right? Like Nocturne Evelynn is very different from say like Lilia, right? There's some champs that are better at side laning or ganking side lane than.
So much untapped power. Welcome to Summoner's Rift. Command. Minions have spawned. control. I can be so much more.
cure for fools.
So much untapped power.
Welcome to Summoner's Rift.
My potential is limitless.
Minions have spawned.
By force of will. This power is mine to command.
No cure for fools.
So much untapped power.